Alrighty, I think we can start. It is 5 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. Love that piece. Called order at 5 o'clock, Committee of the Whole. And I will begin, as we always do. The town of Smithers acknowledges the Gitumden clan and the Wet'suwet'en people on whose unceded traditional territory we live, work, and play. We have no one in the gallery, so I'm skipping the webcast notice. And council, we have an agenda. May I have a motion to approve, please? Councillor Buchanan. All in favor? We don't need seconders tonight. I remember we're committee. Any opposed? And that's carried. So we have in the report from Ms. McKinley, sort of discussion items for UBCM. And sorry, I'm just looking at your recommendation now. It's the first one. So the idea would be to have one of these motions for each of the things that we want to do.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yes, that would be the goal, to either have a resolution or just have a clear intent from council to go forward.
Okay, so we'll just kind of handle it as we go. And if we're unclear, you can let us know. So thanks for the report and putting this together. So it was nice to have the reference. And so green go, red stop. So council, we can do this any way you like, but maybe we'll just go through the presentation that it's there, and then we can add things if there's something missing or particular areas of priority. The one other maybe overarching thing I'll say, since the first thing in front of us is the hospital, this is only a thought and not a conclusion, but we may want to take something like Ministry of Health topics, particularly relating to the hospital, and perhaps do that in conjunction with the Northwest Regional Hospital District. This is also on the priority list there. So instead of going to more than one meeting with the same minister for the same topic. So it's just a suggestion at this point. Could be done a couple of ways. We could invite the chair of the Northwest Regional Hospital District to ours, plus their staff member, and that could all be together. So that may or may not work, but I just am aware that last year we did this, and right after us, Northwest Regional Hospital District had the same meeting. And I'm a member of that too, so it'd just be cool to do it once. So we can just leave that as a thought process for now and see how that comes together once we've chosen our topics. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. Just a quick question. Is there a reason that we're going to do the open before the closed?
Just the way the agendas were presented, and I think it enables the staff that are here to sort of participate in this part, and then they can depart if they don't have to be here.
Okay, apologies. It just said at the agenda it started at 5, so I was just confused.
And both are marked at 5 so that we can go from one to the other. Have I misspoken?
No, that's absolutely correct, Your Worship.
Thanks. Okay, so to the potential topics. So first up then is hospital district. Any comments, differences of opinion? We can always hone the specifics as we go. People are generally in favor of this one. Councillor Ray.
I was just, pardon me, I was just wondering about the South Front storm sewer. I agree that we could bring it up because we want it done at the same time as long-term care facility. It was kind of promised to us that offsite works would be included, but I don't believe that it will be anymore. Which is a point in of itself to bring to a minister. But I'm just wondering if this is the only minister we're going to bring this to.
I'm just going to back up, Councillor Ray, so that I'm with you. So you're talking about going to Minister of Infrastructure. Is that right? So because you linked
No,
the South Front.
it's under the Minister of Health.
So the actual hospital now would go to Minister of Infrastructure. So the Minister of Health is not responsible for buildings. So I'm just trying to find the linkage you had to the South Storm.
Because in the report, it's under Minister of Health, as is the hospital. So I just wanted to, I didn't realize there'd been a change in that. So.
Thank you very much, Mayor Atchell. And yes, To the note of the South Trunk Storm Sewer, and maybe just sort of context pieces with the update on the long-term care facility, it would be the recommendation of staff to not seek an update on the timeline for the long-term care facility, as staff will be working with the Ministry of Health in an ongoing fashion. And also we can, instead of going to the Ministry of Health and using one of the topics, simply have the long-term care facility update during the Northern Health meeting, and prioritize the investment of infrastructure, which we are expecting the South Trunk Storm Sewer to be a notable conversation that would arise during the development of the long-term care facility as a potential offsite works requirement. And Mr. Allen, you can correct me if I get anything wrong on this one.
Okay, so I'm still confused now by what you said.
I'm just gonna step back. So I hadn't made the connection. I was still just thinking about how we might want to tackle the hospital. So I'm just catching up to you in terms of linking topics. But I'm still at the fact that the Bulkley Valley District Hospital, if we're going to lobby for it, will be to the Minister of Infrastructure, not Health. Because the Minister of Health is not responsible for buildings. She's responsible for service delivery. It will be the Minister of Infrastructure that we would talk to for the hospital. That's just how it's laying out this year.
Okay, well then that makes even more sense to make sure that we bring up the South Trunk Storm Sewer. It's interesting that because they've changed ministries, we can't hold the health ministry accountable to some of the promises that were made to us. So I don't get myself in trouble. I think we know what I'm talking about. But I think there's a space there to make sure that, I know it's not the same health minister, but the ministry is probably much the same. And I did want a space to hold that accountability there.
So maybe for this, we'll see if this works, Mr. Schroeder, if we hang on to the ideas, the things that we think are important, and then we can sort out in the logistics afterwards, if we're going to one minister or another, or if we feel that it needs to go to the staff level, or maybe all of those. So out of the previous conversation, I'm taking that we probably want to continue advocacy for the hospital, which is the building, and that we're going to need to advocate for expansion of the services like the South Trunk Storm. And we're probably going to have to chew up some of that nuance in how that goes together. Mr. Dewar.
I was just going to mention the ministry staff are quite good at shifting directions if they see that a topic should be going to a different minister than the one that we've identified. So if we can clarify what we're seeking to meet on, certainly that's one we can put in. And if it gets redirected, certainly we can go with it.
Thanks, Mr. Dewar. So I'm going to go back to Councillor Ray to finish your thought, and then I'll go around.
Just if we are splitting away, then topic B provided additional complex care supports, that would definitely still stay with the Minister of Health then. So the other two might go, but that one would stay.
Yeah, and I think just going back to the hospital as well, I think it makes sense to make a note that this is on the priority list for the hospital district as well. So there's been some renewed energy into maintaining the priority projects at the hospital district, and BDDH is on that priority list. So I just think there'll be some follow-up in how we put the speaking notes together. Okay, and I saw some hands, but I'm just going to go around. I'm going to start with Councillor Leonard.
Yeah, it was more just to muddy the waters more after Mr. Dewar's comments, because I'm with Councillor Ray. These topics are all under the Ministry of Health, this initial, the hospital and the storm sewer. So based on what Mr. Dewar just said, if we're agreeing what's under Ministry of Health, then down the road, if it's recommended that we go with another ministry, then they'll take care of it. Yes, okay.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just know because I met with the Minister of Health not that long ago, and she reminded me that if you want a building, talk to her, because Minister Ma was a couple tables over. She said that's where all the building and infrastructure has gone now, into the Ministry of Infrastructures. But yes, I think we can sort it out. And then I think I saw Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor Attrell. So I just had a question around recognizing there's a board dedicated to advancing this priority. If perhaps as a member on the board, you felt it appropriate to push a little bit harder and ask them to give us a projected timeline, target, something. And then my second question is, do we think it would be beneficial to update under key concerns, under operational risks, where we say there's suboptimal conditions hinder staff recruitment and retention, including the frequent closure of the maternity ward? I just thought that might be beneficial to highlight.
Probably one thing we have to do is just update this, unless staff have done that already, to make sure that what we're saying are the current issues, because there have been some changes at the hospital. So I don't disagree. I just mean we need to be current. Okay, so far I'm at support for the hospital and generally for South Trunk Storm. Councillor Bucama.
I must confess, if I was to be honest, that I wish both items in red were still in green, but I'd love an update on the long-term care facility, and I feel like we need to keep pushing on the additional addictions bed, but that's just me. I don't know if other councillors feel the same way.
Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you very much, Mayor Attrell. I will note that both the both expediting the construction of the new Bulkley Valley District Hospital, as well as an update on the timeline for the long-term care facility, are still on the list for the Northern Health Authority meeting. Largely, as these projects are turning, well, I guess at least in the case of the long-term care facilities, that one is in motion. Northern Health is fairly involved in that work themselves. With respect to the additional addictions beds in BVDH, there was a thought that this could be shuffled under item A in part. And we could both ask for them to expedite this construction and also increase this number of services that were incorporated into the hospital. Or perhaps it was moved under B.
Yeah, we discussed fitting the additional addictions beds for the Bulkley Valley District Hospital potentially under B for additional complex care supports in Smithers.
Councillor Raven.
Great. So of course, I'm fully supportive of the hospital. And then I actually do like how we're putting it under complex care, because complex care covers a wider range than just addictions. So I like how it's more of a catch-all. And then I support the South Trunk Storm Sewer to be asked about as well.
All right, so we're kind of inching it along. How are you doing, Mr. Schroeder, with translating what we're saying into good notes?
I believe I'm following along, Mayor Attrell. Just as a note, we will provide another report, an update to council that refines any of the items that have been identified and includes any of the recommended changes that council has noted during this evening. So I promise we are following closely.
Okay, well, we have a bit of time, so I do appreciate that staff brought this now. So there's time for us to see the revised notes, and then we'll see the book when it comes out. Councillor Ray.
Yeah, I support taking that additional addictions beds and putting it under complex care. What I don't really support is specifying that they have to be in BVD 8, because we know there aren't this has been a problem. We had to close maternity because we had too many people from that with other needs in the hospital. And I don't want to be prescriptive as to what we see the beds in the hospital being used for, because if we're going to build a new hospital, I think we need more than 2 addictions beds. But to take 2 beds away from something else that I don't know what the priorities are, doesn't really make sense in a physically constrained hospital.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I don't know that I perhaps removing the reference to the hospital, though I can't imagine where they'd be, but anyway, I'm ambivalent there. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. Just to further muddy the waters as we go along here. Specific to, is it okay if I comment now on the 1B? So provide additional complex care in Smithers? Thank you. So I was reflecting on the Local Government Leadership Academy in Richmond just a few months ago or a month or so ago. And some of the comments that were made by ministers in talking about preparation for UBCM and saying that we're likely to be more successful if we do a number of things, including be specific on what we're asking for. So in this particular bullet, I just wanted to ask how council felt about being more specific in that what we're asking for seems like a lot. So just as an example, I was thinking about how other units specifically in Prince George are designed to be separate too. So thinking, for example, we know we're going to have supportive housing, or however BC Housing will characterize it, that's going to be developed in this area. Is there an opportunity for us to talk about, do we foresee complex care being included in that? Or do we just want to leave it to be quite general and hope for the best?
I guess my own opinion is, you know, as I've heard it explained for Smithers, that we do have complex care service delivery. So we don't have a facility. We don't have the under one roof model that was first described the first time I heard complex care. What matters, I guess, to me, is that there is service delivery. So I do agree that there needs to be some beds somewhere for people to be in when they're receiving more determined service, I guess. But for now, if professionals can go to where people are and support them with the services that come under that banner of complex care. So whether it's, you know, addiction support, additional medical support, therapy, counseling, if those things can be delivered, that to my mind is the most important. I mean, ideally, I could imagine a building with all kinds of services in it, but I mean, I honestly don't see that on the table for this community right now. Portions of that are going to be delivered to our neighboring communities in Terrace and Prince George. And we just understand the reality of where the provincial government is right now. A building is not going to materialize with all the things that I'd like to imagine. So that's a long way of saying I would be happy if we had additional supports delivered to people where they are. And if new facilities are built, even, you know, a new supportive housing building, if there's enough resources in the community that can go to people in those units and provide the extra service they need, like, I think that's better. And it's also, some people receive service in their homes. That's okay too. So I personally don't have a straight answer to that. I think what's important is that we have enough services and professionals in the community that can deliver to people what they need. So that, if that makes sense, like, I think that's actually the primary goal, recognizing all the other things that we feel we're short of, whether it's hospital beds, long-term care beds, supportive housing, shelter beds. So I personally would be satisfied if we have enough services to meet people where they are. I don't know if that helped.
Thank you very much. So I wonder if we shouldn't, under the action, be more specific in saying that for us, again, would love to hear from others as well, in staffing supports or program support or something, just because it's sort of a catch-all here. There's quite a bit. It says and housing supports in Smithers. So I'm just trying to think of how can we be more specific to ensure that we're going to be more successful in our ask.
Councillor.
I think one way to be a little more specific is to just say it's not sufficient. We would like to see numbers on how many people were helped and outcomes from the ministry. And then we would like them doubled in the next year so that we're challenging them to, because I kind of agree with Councillor Patterson in that if we just, we ask very politely, and I think it's time to get a little more specific and a little more pointed in our asks. Because I think it's been a little hard or a little bit easy to dismiss us because we're pressing home the point that we don't have enough, but we're not delivering the message of how it's affecting our community. Because I think we're trying to be too polite. We appreciate the services that we have, but the services that we have are not funded to the point where it's making enough of a difference in our community. And so I think there's maybe a way to challenge them to provide proof that they've provided more than they have in the past.
I think one of the things that we ought to do then, and this is whether it's us at council or asking staff to help us with this, is getting more specifics on what's currently available, because it was a couple of years ago when I was working on this, and it was the previous manager of Goodacre Place who advised me what was available, and it was way more than what I thought. So I think actually knowing what's currently available would enable us to know what to ask for additionally. I don't know all of that, and it was substantially more than I thought. And that's back to people with specialty in the community going to where people are. So I don't know, do we need one more, I don't know, mental health, maybe, like, I don't know what those are, but probably in order to go where you're going, we're gonna have to know what's currently here. Mr. Dewar.
I'm not sure if this would be a viable option or not for council, but what if we asked for what service delivery levels are presently at and how the ministry plans to increase those service delivery levels in the coming years?
I guess my only comment is we might want to ask that first question sooner, like perhaps that could be directed even through the HSA manager, through Mr. Hickish, and just find out what is actually here. That would give us that bit more information. Is that a reasonable request? Okay. Is that okay with just staff direction, or do we need a motion for that? That's okay? Okay. Councillor Ray.
Just I like Mr. Dewar's approach, because you can tell me till the cows come home how many positions there are and everything. All I know is it's not sufficient. So I think that's where we need to challenge. And I don't know if having our staff dig up all the work is really going to help us. Whereas if we put the onus on them to provide, okay, what are you providing? Why do you feel this is enough? We're saying that it's not. I think is maybe a better approach.
Okay, I just thought it's too late at UBCM. I thought if we could find out the information now, then by the time we get to UBCM, and the other piece, I'll just look to Mr. George in case we probably have some of this information available at the situation table. If we, even ask staff at the situation table to say, just give us a quick snapshot, if you wanted us to lobby for something additional under this broad banner of complex care, just send us a note with the list. So I think some of it might be quite quick to get. So I'm back to, if what we're saying is we want to be specific and we don't actually know what we have yet. So so I'm just gonna leave that as the general request from staff. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor Attrell. And just a general comment before we leave this topic. I just would like to see, if possible, in any of the health, actually a number of our topics, so including the new hospital, complex care, emergency shelter, additional RCMP members, and the Foundries of Proactive Measure, these are all of our requests in order to also tackle, the toxic drug crisis. That was something that was alarming to me when we went to the Provincial Community Safety Wellbeing Committee, conference, and that we're still in this crisis. And I think this just shows, by being specific, that this is the municipality's way of trying to deal with the crisis that is obviously maybe not being dealt with by the province as we would like to see it.
So you're just talking about that in the preamble.
In those specific topics, I just would like, yeah, absolutely, just to see it wherever staff see fit, adding those specific language, the toxic drug crisis.
Okay, and I'll just say before Ms. McKinley has to say it, that when someone starts typing in those forms, you character out at some point, so we'll end up having the most important things at the top, and then we can have our kind of errata statement somewhere, but I don't know what the number of characters is, but it's less. Yeah, so it's not very much. Okay, so just so people are aware that when it comes time to fill out those boxes, it is a challenge for staff. Counselor Ray, sorry, Counselor Buchanan, did you have your hand up? Okay, Counselor Ray.
I just think that's the kind of thing where we can, like we did with the RBA, the mayor or whoever's heading the meeting starts out with, we're asking for a lot of things from different ministries because of the toxic drug crisis. And then that saves the characters for more of the meat, but the message is the same to every minister.
Okay, and then I think like right now, just as a reminder, we're giving some feedback to staff, and we're gonna see this again when we do our final, when the book comes out and we get all the right ministers, so. Okay, so where I think we are is we're gonna leave the hospital on the list. We're talking about additional complex care supports. I've lost the bouncing ball in the long-term care facility, so I'm just gonna come back to it, and we're in support of the South Trunk storm. And that's kind of all I think we've got consensus on so far. So the update on the long-term care facility is in red. I actually support that. Does anybody? I don't think we need this as an advocacy for UBCM unless we learn something drastically different here in the next couple of weeks. Okay. Counselor Ray.
Sorry, I do think that when we do meet with Northern Health on an update on the long-term care, that we do mention the South Trunk storm sewer as well. Because I was there when the original thing was pitched, and this stuff was all supposed to be included, and I do want to hold them accountable for that.
Agreed. Okay. So just to make sure we're moving together, so I'm on page 6 of 16, and it was the additional addictions beds and BVDH, and I'm not sure I got the conclusion on that. So here it's recommended that we just leave that for this time. Okay. South Trunk we just talked about. And then, so now I'm on page 5 or 7 of 16, Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs. And that's funding for the 24-hour emergency shelter. This might be one, my suggestion might be to just leave this one for right now and come back to it later. We're going to, it's my understanding, we'll get a bit more information from BC Housing in the next month. And so we may be a bit more aware of what the plans are, but for now, I think leaving it and then figure out if we need to modify this at all based on what's going on. Councilor Raven.
Just the only thing I was going to mention is, I don't know if we need to have the word emergency in there. Like when I keep talking about the shelter, it's a 24-hour shelter, a permanent one. I don't know if emergency needs to be taken off.
Okay, yep, that makes sense. I can remove that part. And Mr. Allen, I was looking at you in case I was misspeaking, but I think the expectation is we'll hear from BC Housing in the next month-ish. Okay. So, and then we can just rejig this based on what we hear from them. But we might as well wait and hear before we spend a lot of time wordsmithing this. Is that all good? Okay. And then the next one is the offsite works. And if I'm understanding staff properly, they're just suggesting that it shall just be, we shall just get offsite works. Councilor Ray?
Well, I was just wondering if indeed there is a minister responsible for infrastructure, that this needs to be brought to them, because it's not just BC Housing. If we're going to build a new hospital, I think there needs to be an understanding that the offsite works come with that as well. Or if they build a new courthouse or anything that we're expecting that, and think especially if the ministry is new, we've been delivering this message. It kind of has been falling on deaf ears, but I think maybe that's one for Minister of Infrastructure. If there aren't all, if we're already at 3 or 4, then maybe we drop it this time, but I wouldn't mind having that conversation with the minister again, though.
Okay, did I see someone over here? We're good. The other thing, like I don't disagree with what you said, and I don't disagree with the staff wordage here. And I do think that we may want to revisit we'll get through it. And then when it comes back to us, sort of look at all of this with a really sharp eye. We all know what's going on in the world and with the province. So in a month, sort of think about, well, what's really the very most important things to us and hone it to that. So I'm not expecting, lots of good, big financial prizes these days. So just really thinking about what do we absolutely need? So right now we have an expectation with the supportive housing that this will be met. That's the language, we've been told that with the same expectation for long-term care. So none of this needs a response. It's just a thought process for when we see this come back to be kind of keen-eyed at it. What do we think are the most important? Okay. Does that say 15th? Mr. Dewar is advising that UBCM requests are June 15th. So we may or may not be wiser by the time we got this, but we have time to think. Councillor Patterson, then Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. Just a question, I guess, to yourself and other members of council. Do we see it appropriate to add the soil contamination issue under housing just to solidify to the province that this will have significant impacts on our ability to continue to build housing? Or I'm just curious on others' thoughts.
So is just notified by Ms. McKinley that the deadline for UBCM submissions this year is July 1st.
I thought you were speaking back to what Councillor Patterson said. That's why it didn't make sense to me. Okay, so we do have time. July 1st is better, so we have time for these. And now Councillor Patterson, remind me what you said, because now I forgot.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. Just if the table thought it appropriate to add under Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs our issue around soil contamination, just to hammer home to the province that this will have significant impacts to our ability to continue to build housing in our community.
Is your hand up? Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you, and my apologies. Maybe just one note that I'll make is that council is also advocating through NCLGA through a resolution on the inclusion of offsite works for BC housing projects. And I believe that that resolution was passed by NCLGA, meaning it will be recommended to UBCM as a body as well.
And then to your last question, before I forget again, that might be one of those things, picking up where Councillor Ray was, where we might want to fit things into a conversation rather into our, depending on how the number of requests go and the number of words we're allowed to get. And depending on the meetings achieved. So whether it goes as well to the Minister of Housing, to Health, to BC Housing, so we may want to just have that script of the things that are in the speaking notes in addition to what's submitted. Primarily, I think that the soils issue belongs to Ministry of Environment, but we can always fit into, and I think that's primarily where it belongs. But I think having that kind of background of what we say during the conversation. Okay. Councillor Ray.
So 2 things to the soil. If we don't mention it to other ministries and make them understand how it's going to affect their plans. The Ministry of Environment, we already met with them once, albeit it was with staff that I was there. And they're concerned about the environment and the environment only. And it makes it easier for them to dismiss us and just say, this is for the reasons it's for, and then it stops. If other ministers know about it as well, and they can bring a perspective from their ministry to the conversation, that might help. So but I agree within the script. The other thing I wanted to mention is, things like offsite works. If the senior level of government is having financial troubles, their favorite trick is to make it somebody else's problem. So I don't want to take it off their table for asking for things. That's their decision, what they want to do. I don't want to make that decision for them. I think we need to make it difficult for them to pass things down to us.
Thanks. I'm going to give it to Mr. Doer, but just to that point, I also think if we really want a couple of things, we should really focus on a couple of things, and we can always just put this off till next year. I don't disagree with you. But I think after last year's UBCM, where we had so much on the go, I'm in favor of doing less and being more pointed with fewer meetings. But Mr. Doer, to that last point.
Yeah, and I think Councillor Ray already hit on it, but in my experience, the ministries do not like individual municipalities having multiple meetings with different ministries on the same topic. They tend to focus it in one area. So I think in terms of the soils and the implications for other ministries, certainly that's one that we can have prepared for a scripted conversation. But I think that likely they would move it towards a singular meeting rather than multiple meetings.
Thanks, Mr. Doer. Okay, I'm just gonna go back to my page because we've moved on to another page. I want to make sure we're good where we are. So we've talked about the inclusion of offsite works. At the bottom of that page, I've got Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General and the policing issue again. So I'm good with it. Okay, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question through to staff. Did we get a rationale from 2024 from the province as to why that meeting was denied?
Thank you very much, Mayor Atchell. No, unfortunately, the province does not provide rationale. They either say yes or no, and that's their decision.
Previous minister in this department had said no to us twice before, and I think probably just didn't care to have the same conversation again. So we brought it up every time. So that I'm guessing at this point, but it was the same person and the same conversation. And he had explained to us before why the answer was no. Councillor Ray and then Councillor Patterson.
I'm just on this one, I think. In the same kind of vein, if we are turned down on this one, I don't think a meeting with RCMP is going to be fruitful because they just pass the same message along. So.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell, and apologies to staff if I missed it, but would this particular notice, would there be an opportunity here to also talk about the prisoner expenses, or would that be separate too?
Thank you very much. On the prisoner expenses question, I believe that this one was still in part up in the air as we have yet to get a fulsome answer from the RCMP. But certainly we could bring the request for information. RCMP is through the federal government, and province doesn't do much in the way of funding for them. The bills are provided from the federal RCMP, not the provincial, unfortunately.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I might just suggest that should we put this in, if it's the will of the table, that we would include that increase from that 354 to the 435 that we saw, assuming they accept our meeting, but I think I can hear loud and clear that we haven't been successful in the past, but I just think it was such a significant increase. I worry that it's going to continue over time. So something to highlight for them, perhaps.
Councillor Ray.
Well, I think the one thing that ties the prisoners into the province is we don't know what we're paying to house. And if they're refusing provincial officers, yet billing us for provincial transfers of inmates that are staying overnight in Smithers, then I think we have a disconnect between what they're providing and what they're asking us to provide. And I think it's a way to hold them accountable. If they don't feel that we need provincial officers, then we shouldn't be paying for provincial prisoners.
Okay, let's not go too deep in this. So we've heard it. We can include it in the narrative. Mr. Schroeder has let us know that some of this is federally paid. So we might be in a little bit of a spiral of our own. So I'm going to try to get us out of here, Councillor Patterson, and then we'll move on.
Moving out of the spiral, your worship, I would just say that the only rationale I can think of off the top of my head to highlight it for the province is that perhaps, and again, I don't want to spread any misinformation, but it'd be interesting to see if of those prisoner expenses, is any of that for local short-term, so i.e. those who might be there because they're suffering with addiction. Thank you.
Okay. Carrying on, we've got Minister of Transportation, funding assistance for the South Slope. Councillor Ray.
Just a question through the staff. Are we going to be going in having received a report from the geotech? Or are we going to UBCM before we receive that?
Mr. Allen.
I think we have received the geotech report. Yes,
Okay,
I
thank
don't
you.
think that, but it hasn't come to council.
I think that's okay. The information's there, so it can be
Yes.
used to bolster. Okay. Alrighty, the next one, Crown Land Transfer. Okay. And so I flipped the page 9 of 16 or page 7. So Ministry of Social Development, Poverty Reduction, funding for the Foundry. I'm just gonna say, I don't remember this one at the council table in a long time. So, Mr. Schroeder first, if you've got, or I don't know if it was Mr. Schroeder, just how this one came here. If you remember, was it on or Mr. George? Someone,
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, council had received a letter from the Proton Foundation requesting a letter of support for the Youth Foundry Initiative, and council at that time included it under the items for staff to go and review.
thanks for that. That helps. And okay, we got people all the way. So go to Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, there was a meeting about having a foundry facility in Smithers that happened last summer. Several of us attended. We were just unsuccessful in our application. But I know that the will at that meeting was, if we're unsuccessful, to apply again the following year.
Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I will briefly note that staff are currently watching this this project proceed forward. And we are aware that the individuals involved are working or have recently submitted another funding request to the provincial government. And should that, should the status of this item change between now and UBCM, we will look to update the document. And, at the end of the day, it could be a giant thank you if they've provided the funding.
Mr. George.
Thank you, through to your worship. That's correct. Just building on Councillor Buchma's comments of the foundry. So in August, council received the invite to attend an engagement session on August 15th. And there was a letter that was sent to council around August 7th there. So just, we did receive a letter there, and there was one engagement that I believe staff and council both attended.
Thanks for the clarification, Councillor Buchanan. You're good?
Yep.
Then you can turn your mic off. Thank you. Okay, so I had a couple of questions and I'll go around, but I think they've been answered. So the application is not coming from us, it's coming from Proton.
That's correct.
Perfect. Okay. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. Just to support the initiative, I was going to suggest, and it's great that staff are following this, but just that perhaps we would coordinate with the community champion just to get specific on what they're looking for when we talk about prioritize the establishment. I did have just a very brief conversation with that individual just to see if, you know, is there something specific that they're looking for? And yeah, I think they absolutely just said, yes, it'd be great if staff reached out just so that we could be more specific in our request. Just because I feel like the prioritize the establishment of is quite vague.
Okay, Counselor Ray. Oh, sorry, Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I will apologize, but I do confirm that staff are working with the applicants and you know, are yeah, trying to get that information directly from them.
Thanks, Mr. Schroeder. Counselor Ray. You're good? Okay. All right. Moving on. So MOE, and that's the soil. So I think that one's good. And just to follow up, Councilor Ray had mentioned we'd met with staff, but Mr. Dewar and I did meet with the minister, I can't remember, last month maybe. And so now it's back kind of in staff court for the follow-up there. So it's coming along, but I'm happy to leave it here. It remains a priority. Okay, then the next one under MOA is additional base funding for recycling. Okay, Councilor Ray.
I'm just. It sounds like we're asking for money that we want instead of money that should be there, because that was the agreement that was signed, was that it was to be a producer responsibility and not a taxpayer responsibility. So I'm just wondering, just a way of sharpening the language a little bit, rather than making it look like we're coming hand in hand asking, we're coming with a half empty wallet demanding that we get what we were promised.
Thanks, Councilor Ray. I can see Mr. Schroeder nodding, so I think that's okay. Councilor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. My comments were sort of in the similar vein in that could we be specific and provide the details of the cost and then how much we're seeking? Again, I just think if we could be a little bit more specific, we might be more successful.
Yeah, I think my recollection of what happens at these meetings is the people across the table will be fully armed with all that information. I think where Council Ray is going is when this project started years ago, it was a no net cost to the town, and it was the moving of the depot from where it used to be burned down to where it is now. That means we're paying. So it's talking about adjusting. If I'm following you, you can speak for yourself, but it's adjusting the way we're compensated so that this isn't a net cost to taxpayers. The program was never supposed to be that, but they're just within the kilometers of where they're allowed to be. So it costs us quite a bit of money. I see Mr. Lawrence nodding. So if anyone has anything to add, but I think that's really it. It's just making the program delivered to the taxpayers of Smithers the way it was envisioned in the first place. Councilor Ray, and then if you have anything, Mr. Lawrence, you're welcome to jump in.
Just a comment that it wasn't just the move. We were already getting there before the move. I think it was already a net cost to taxpayers before the move, and it's gotten worse since.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence, if there was anything? You're good? Okay. I can't tell because you're nodding generally with this. It's like, you're good? Okay. Definitely interrupt when you want to. Okay. Okay, so I think we're good with that. We'll rely on staff to hone that down a bit. And then the same with the next one. We have been down this path a few times as well to enable multifamilies to participate. Okay. So moving on. Oh yeah, this also was I think this was an NCLGA. Whatever that's called. What are they called? Resolution. So adding capital to ESS. Okay. Who did I miss? Councilor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. Just a question through to staff. Do you see it appropriate to give an example for our community on what we would define as a capital need? Or when I read it, I guess I just thought sometimes I know we get brand new ministers, and I know staff on the other end do a really great job of providing those specifics, but I just was curious if staff felt it appropriate to, I know sometimes when you make it specific to a minister, they can sort of relate. So just a question.
Mr. Dewar.
Yeah, certainly we'll look at refining the language before we submit everything to the ministries, but I think that's one that we've had several examples recently. So I think that's everyone's well aware of what we're talking about.
Thank you. Okay, next one, the recommendation is to remove the post-secondary housing. Counselor Buikema.
It's not at the top of my priority list, but I definitely want to see Coast Mountain College survive in Smithers. And I feel like having access to student housing is a big part of their survival in this community. So I'm guessing it's been pulled off the list because it's not at the top of our priority list, but I do think it's important.
Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you very much, Mayor Attrell. This recommendation is partially informed by the discussion with Coast Mountain College. In some, the way that this business case ended up going is, well, sorry, in some, the way that the student housing discussion ended up going for Coast Mountain College was that they were requested by the ministry to submit a business case for the proposed housing in Smithers. The proposed business case went to the ministry, and the ministry elected not to fund that housing project. And in part with the substantial changes to demographics to students that are currently ongoing, and a potential shift to domestic and Indigenous students, certainly there is the potential for housing not to be needed in the immediate future, though Indigenous housing is certainly a conversation that could be compelling about for a business case.
Counselor Raven.
Yeah, so in a couple of my recent conversations with the downturn in international students, I've actually seen a 41% increase in domestic and Indigenous students, and most of them are residing within Smithers already or close enough to take transit. So I don't think it's as high a need as it once was, though of course, I think it would be nice to have, but I'm okay with it not being on the list this year.
Counselor Ray.
Yeah, I guess it goes back though to this campus of the college has always been secondary to Terrace because Terrace has student housing and can attract students from elsewhere. Regardless international or not. And that's a barrier because it doesn't allow the campus here to succeed. It makes it so that our local students can't afford to go and stay in Terrace. So we're not getting programs here because there aren't enough students. So it's actually affecting the students locally. And it's unfortunate that there has to be a business case because that's what the international students was all about, was a business to make money so that the college could survive and everything. The college needs to survive. And I think this is integral to the success of the Smithers campus.
Thanks, Counselor Ray. Yeah, I think, it's quite a few years of the program. The international students have been in Smithers, and previous councils at this table approved temporary housing adjacent to Pioneer Place. So it was all in, sort of in step to get to the point where the foundation was last year and being able to submit the business case. And those of us that were at UBCM last year thought that we were getting it. So it is really unfortunate, because during the best of times, it wasn't prioritized. When there was great need and students were sleeping in their cars, all that kind of stuff, the housing wasn't prioritized. So in this last bit of the conversation, I've been torn a little bit. I'm prepared to leave it off the list this year, but if you can't build the housing in the best of times, then what? So when the students actually aren't housed, and it was actually quite heart-wrenching to hear from the center manager last year or the year before saying that students were actually just sleeping in their cars. It's quite atrocious. So Councilor Ray is right, I think. Okay, but we'll leave that for now. And if people feel differently the next time around, we can bring it up. Councilor Ray, go ahead.
Sorry, just because it's the same. Oh, my bad. I'm wrong.
Okay, I just said you were right. What's going on?
Different minister, that's why I thought it was the same.
So I'm gonna move on then. We'll take staff's recommendation on that one. And if you change your mind the next time we come around, we can add it back in, or if we learn something different. So I'm on page 11 or 13 of 16. So this is Northern Health. And this is Bulkley Valley District Hospital, long-term care facility. And I'll stop there. We're good? Okay. And so on the next page, that update on supportive housing. So we may want to keep this here, but the actual questions might be different by the time UBCM comes along. So for now, I would suggest we leave it here, see what we know a month from now. That good? Okay. And then this was to Recycle BC. The same two things. Okay. So that's the end of the list. So I think what I'd like to ask now is if you had items that were on your own list that aren't on this list. Councilor Ray.
I'm just throwing this out there because I don't know where it's at lately, but what about the riverbank stabilization? Where's that sitting at?
Mr. Allen.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Actually, I can give an update. We are planning, our consultants are planning to have tender documents ready for July or June 1st. And we should be getting bids in for July award. So the idea is to still have Rosenthal Road section completed this year.
Mr. Dewar.
And just to build on that, so the Rosenthal section is one section out of 3 sections that we are looking to complete. But with some of the realities we've heard, or some of the challenges we've faced with Department of Fisheries and Ocean, the funding is not going to be able to adequately fund the, I guess, stabilization of all 3 identified areas.
Councilor Ray, and then I think I saw Councilor Patterson too.
Yeah, so I don't maybe see this as a separate meeting, but perhaps it's something we could bring up when we're talking about the airport, that if they're planning on helping us with funding for the airport, that we may run into the same kind of problems with DFO, and that perhaps the funders should work with DFO right up front to figure out what's going on, rather than us getting some money and then it not being sufficient.
Thanks, Councilor Ray. Councilor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor Altschul. So I had 3. My first was with the Ministry of Energy and Climate Solutions to discuss the significant P&G rate increases to northern communities.
Okay, do you have more than that? Like, I know that we were pursuing BCUC, who is the regulator that makes that change. So what is your thought with the minister?
Well, the minister is also responsible for natural gas as well.
I'm just trying to make the connection to the rates. So.
If I may, I guess I just think it's important for the province to understand that if it's supposed to be an arm or a division.
Sorry, Councillor Patterson, I am going to just interrupt you. Councillor Ray.
Well, I'm going to recuse myself, but I don't think it's remiss for me to point out that I believe the BC Utilities Commission is supposed to be independent of the government, but I will recuse myself until we're done talking.
We'll give Councillor Ray a moment. Councillor Patterson.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. But my understanding is that they're also supposed to be aware of situations in which municipalities or others are having issues, but I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, I think my gut feel right now is that our path is with BCUC, but to the table, if anyone wants to go differently, Mr. Dewar.
Yeah, and I'll just remind council that we have invited PNG as well as the BC Utilities Commission to come to before council and speak to her so that we can speak to this matter. Additionally, we are developing and sending a letter to both parties, and that's one I've seen numerous letters from a whole variety of communities across Northwest BC send in letters. So certainly I'd say it's a topic that is being well advocated for at this present moment.
Okay,
Excellent. Moving on, the next suggestion I have would be to the Ministry of oh, apologies. The next suggestion would be to the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General, pardon me, to discuss the disproportionate, pardon me, automotive insurance rates for northern communities and the significantly long wait times for automotive repairs. And the last piece of that would be and request for them to cover the 16,000 for a mobile radar sign to improve road safety. And I can expand on that if needed.
just leave it to the table, Counselor Ray.
Just that council's beating their head against the wall on the disproportionate rates and gets the same answer every time, no matter who we're talking to. It doesn't mean it's still not unfair, but we've been down that path and I think we know what the answer is going to be.
Counselor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. And I would just provide clarity around the request for the 16,000. My understanding is that we had asked, well, actually, I'm looking through to staff because I'm going to forget the specifics, but we had submitted a grant application to improve road safety, and I believe we were denied. And I started doing just some more digging to understand who is doing anything to improve road safety in our community right now. And my understanding is outside of the RCMP that there's nothing really happening. So this is my attempt to try to be specific and how we can help to support, just safety in our community.
Counselor Raven.
At the last day of NCLGA, there was the presentation, and of course now my mind is going blank. But it was by the ministry. It was about speed boards, red light cameras and all of that. And I think that might be a more interesting route to go down rather than doing a UBCM ask. So that was, I believe, was the last presentation and my mind went completely blank. But there is also a community survey that I can dig up and send out to everybody as well. I remember talking to Mayor Attrell about it.
Yeah, I don't have any more to add than that. I think, to bring something to public safety and Solicitor General, sort of similar to what you were saying before, we'd have a pretty clear idea what our question and ask is. And I'm not there right now, so might get there in a month, but I guess I'd invite any counselor who has something that they're thinking about. We do have a little bit of time. So at our next meeting, when we see these brought back, if there was something, although at that point, I'd urge that you're trying to do this sort of form as well, so that we get through the background, the errata and the recommendation. At least we know what we're talking about and make it a little bit easier on staff, sort of try to take it forward from there. Okay, the only thing I was going to say, and that's why I liked what I got here today, the things that I had written down that were the things that I thought were priority for me coming here. Included policing, support for community safety, environment, that's the soils, the hospital. And that was my short list. So I think we've talked about all of those, so appreciate that. Did I see your hand, Councillor Patterson?
Yes, Your Worship, I apologize. So actually, thank you through to Councillor Raven. That's excellent because I've been on a bit of a mission to try to identify what's going on around road safety. So that's very encouraging. My last one was to the Minister of Education and Childcare to prioritize funding for rural communities or Smithers who are without childcare. So either through the Childcare BC New Spaces Fund or other, but I respect that staff maybe are having conversations or not to put them on the spot, but just want to continue to advocate for that when we can.
Mr. Schroeder? Mr.
Thank-
Allen?
Thank you very much. This is actually an item that staff had discussed raising with council. So staff are more than happy to take away the broader discussion of childcare facilities or some type of childcare funding. If I could also provide a brief update on the letter to PNG, I don't think that, the letter to the BCUC rather, not PNG. The BCUC did respond this morning morning. And they just advised us that they would not be willing to come and delegate to council as it would violate the process that has been established for BCUC to review the PNG price increases that have been put before them. However, they have clarified that if they would like it, if the town would like additional comments submitted to them about the process, that we could do that as well. I intended to inform them that yes, the letter was intended to be a broader letter of comment as well.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Apologize to the table for monopolizing. And this will be a very short rant. I guess at some point I look at ICBC rates, I look at childcare rates, I look at Pacific Northern gas rates, and I just wonder to myself, how much more are we going to take? So when I talk about having a conversation with the ministry, you know, I do understand that the BCUC is an independent regulatory agency, but of the British Columbia government. So at some point, to me, I just feel like if we're not having the conversations with them, then who's holding the BCUC account to make sure that they're even having conversations or willing to meet with municipalities? At some point, I just feel like we need to be the ones to speak up and just say, you know, we're consistently being hit with higher rates, disproportionately higher rates, with everything. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for listening to my rant.
All righty. Councillor Raven.
Well, I just think that we just run the risk that if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. Because I think we can all think of 20 or 30 things we want to bring up. And I think really honing it down to what our top few are, I think is the best.
Councillor Buckham, I'm sorry, you had your hand up before.
Yeah, I like the list. And I really do support the idea of it's better to have fewer requests and do them well than have too many requests, which I think we did last fall at UBCM. And I was going to mention too, I'm not excited about petitioning the government for the lack of repair facilities in this community. To me, that's market driven, and I don't think the government has any control over. It can't make a new auto repair shop happen in Smithers because there isn't enough of them. To me, that's all market driven.
Councillor Ray.
Just a counterpoint to that, part of the problem with people not wanting to do ICBC work is for what ICBC is willing to pay. So that is actually something we could advocate for. And then I just wanted to circle, I wasn't sure what we were doing with childcare. If we are, I think a point I'd like to make is that I wasn't a fan of the original one, mostly because it was in the park. But I think a point we do need to make is we don't have a lot of room in town. Please let us do something else with the building as well. Even, you know, like if we have to put it, if we can put apartments in it, just don't make it a single story building that's just for childcare.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. That is a good little extra. And I know at the end of the last process, I had conversations with our previous MLA who also indicated that there was probably room to have a discussion on location because we put so much effort into the site, which is fine. But at the end of the day, the design on the site was the equivalent of a rectangle. So we knew how much space it needed and that what would be beneficial, because we have to put so much effort into the applications to make sure we can make it move. But if we were to make it work, rather, if we were able to acquire a different piece of property and the rectangle or the space requirements work, why couldn't it be somewhere else? So I think there is some part of that conversation that says those application processes take so long that from start to finish, we might actually have different land solutions. So I thought that was good insight, just to be able to put that if we're going to do a conversation on childcare, recognizing the size of the facility, limited land, that if it were possible and we found a different location through the process, what difference does it make? If it fits, it fits. So thanks. Okay. Are we there for this piece? All right, thanks for all the conversation. So I am going to move that pursuant to section 1992 of the Community Charter, This committee of the whole meeting be closed to the public to permit discussions concerning one item falling under section 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And one item falling under section 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of the council, could be reasonably expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. And I don't think I need a seconder. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. And we're enclosed and we'll just wait a second.